All right, as you can see, we started doing this 67. And this particular vehicle had, we did actually a video on this on how to install a negative roll. This is a standard negative roll system, but now we're converting it over to a coilover. So we've got the whole car blown apart in the front end, and we're just finishing off taking this up. So you see original MNR for 67 through 70. Actually, that'll actually fit all the way up through 73. And you can see the holes are already pre-drilled. Now, in a kit, we give you the template. It looks like this. And this would go, these are the original holes, so then this would have been bolted on here. And then your pilot holes, okay? And once this is bolted in place, you hit your pilot holes, and then you're going to open them up to 9/16. So you can see this has already been done because it was running the original negative roll. And on the conversion, this is going to make it easy because now we don't have to drill those holes. So we're just going to bolt the new arms into this position. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to take this, see the bump stop right here for the upper control arm? We're converting this over to the TS72T, which is the tubular one, which moves this further back. Because remember, we're moving the ball joint back. So we're going to take this off. Then after that, we'll show you how we'll drill for the shock mount at the top, get that position, and put the upper arm in, and we'll start putting this together. It's crank weight. So let's take this on. All right, you can see we got that all cleaned up underneath here. And the next step was I need this template that comes in the kit, okay? This is the drill template for putting the shock mounts. It's these for lining the holes up for drilling, okay? There's little plates underneath here to drop for the carriage bolts so they don't drop. You notice how they don't fall out? Well, that plate underneath there, right there, we've got to drill a hole through that, a 3/8 hole, and that's what this is all about. So one of the things I do, make it quick and simple, is I leave the carriage bolts in there, and I'm going to drop this in so everything lines up in positions. This is going to be pretty much parallel to here. You see that edge there, the stamping? It'll be pretty much parallel is how it goes, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a little scribe right here. One of these out. And I'm going to use the original carriage bolts, nuts rather, line my scribe up. So now that I've got one hole drilled, all I'm going to do is pop this up, put the carriage bolt where I just drilled over, take the next one out, line up my scribes, tighten these down, and drill my next hole. So at the end of the day, when I'm all done with all three, based off the scribe and everything being lined up with the fixture, the base shock mount will come up and bolt underneath and line up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put the upper shock mount on. And you have these little spacers right here. One goes on each side of the shock bearing, like that. So you start by putting this in here like this. Slide this in. This slides in onto the other side. Like that. The nut, it's a 1/2 inch 20 lock nut. Now you can see we got this set up so that it automatically indexes. So once you get it in there, you don't have to hold it. And we'll set this torque to 70 foot-pounds. Okay, this is our adjustable strut rod. And this adjusts your caster, replaces the stock one. And we use a spherical rod end right here, which allows us to pivot with no bind. But there's no fore and aft movement. And that's what you want, is you want something to control the fore and aft movement. Because technically it's called a brake reaction strut. And when you have a rubber bushing in there, for example, was factory, this actually allowed it to move fore and aft. Well, since this is attached to the lower control arm, the wheel would literally be doing this type of a movement, right? So when you go to something like this, you don't have any bind or anything, but you've eliminated that action. So the car responds a lot faster by just doing that. This here is a spacer that goes in the frame, so this is centered in the frame. So you're going to require that. and it goes up into the frame like this, where this is the bottom. So we're going to install this real quick. This is a part of our kit, of course. This here is where we adjust the length of the rod for your caster. Now this right now, as you can see, is pulled all the way forward. We're going to back this up a bit because we're not going to need to do that. It'll move the wheel too far forward. Caster's already in the upper control arm, so we don't need to worry about that. So we will loosen this up, but I want to show you how this goes in on the quick install. And then this is going to attach to the lower control arm. And this is where the shock attaches to, which sits on top. And we're going to show you how all this goes. But I want to show you something here. This here is oval. This hole right here versus this. So you see how this allows that shift? Well, there's a reason for that. When we put this all together, and you're going to see how we do that here, I leave these two, before I do the alignment, I leave these two nuts loose. They're tight enough to where you run them down so nothing's moving, and you'll see how we do that. But I want it so that it can shift a little bit, and there's a reason for that. Because when you do the alignment on the strut rod, and you change this length, that changes the center line of where the bolt is down here, because it's pivoting off the back bolt. It allows the stress to come, the side loads to be removed from the rod end. If I was to bolt this down solid and then do the alignment, let's say I had to move this quite a bit of distance, because this doesn't pivot, it's starting to put side loads up on the rod end, which are unnecessary. It's not going to break it, but it is going to cause undue wear. There's no reason for it. So we deliberately do it this way to allow that load to be removed. It just keeps everything straight. Okay, then once you get the alignment done, then just torque everything up and you're done. It's not that big a deal, but it's one of the tricks we have on our strut rods that you need to know about to get longevity. Let's wear on the part. Okay, so we're going to put it together. We're talking about putting the strut rod in. When I was talking about this sleeve here aligning to the frame. Well, on the other side, it goes right in, but over here, it doesn't want to go. Well, what the deal is from the factory, they had a steel sleeve in here that this car still has. And it was from the original bushings, the original rubber bushings. When we started working on this car, it had a polyurethane bushing. Okay, not the original. But the original had a rubber little sleeve, and you could see this right here. Okay, see this right here? That little lip extra right there, that was on the stock bushing. Okay, this is designed to go into the frame rail itself. So what I need to do is I need to get this out of here. And it's a very thin piece of material. So I'm going to take this out real quick, and you'll see that this will go in. The other side did not have this, and just slid right in like it's supposed to. So if you run across this like way it's supposed, or you know, it'll sit off the frame like this. In other words, you can't tighten it down and it'll be offset, like stick it out like this. That's wrong. And our bracket needs to be up against the frame. This should be indexed inside. So let me get this out of here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. See that pop out? Bingo. That has to happen. It's got to slide in there, and that's going to index that. The other way, it was going to be kicked off, and when you're tightening it, you're not tightening the clevis against the frame. You're tightening against this, and there's no surface area. This has to be inside, just like that. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. So now we can put the strut rod on this side. This is what an eccentric looks like. See the offset? It's an offset cam. And this is what shifts. So this is what we want to get rid of, and we're going to these plates. We're going to install the lockout kit now. And if you'll notice, there's 3 different holes and they're marked. This side's 4, 5, 6, as you can see, and this side's 1, 2, 3. Well, when you put this up in here, you can position it here. Here, you notice, like if I put the bolt over here, it moves it all the way into the slot right here. I can move it all the way here. I turn it again. I can go over to this side. I can drop it down here. I can move it over a little bit. Same thing here, all on this side. When I flip it over, it changes a little bit. So what you got to know, if you're looking at like 4, 5, 6 here, when you put this plate on the back side, the 4, 5, 6 has to be like this. It has to match what you're seeing on the front. You can't have 4, 5, 6 here and then put 4, 5, 6 in the back thinking that it's going to mate. It doesn't. 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Whatever your pattern is that you're looking at has to go against the frame on the back towards you in the front. Okay, that's first thing. So secondly, is depending on where you want to position this also affects the length of the distance for your alignment on the lower control arm. Remember there was a cam here, and that sets your camber. Okay, so there's a trick here. If you're racing the car and you want to square the car and you're plumb bobbing it, you can use these different positions by moving this one way or another to square it up, and also the strut rod, and then do all your alignment for the upper arm. That's one thing that you can do, and you do that with shims. That's a trick for racing. Or if you got a situation where, okay, I'm just going to set the alignment up the way it is, and I'm not racing the car or whatever, and that's fine. You can do whatever. You can position this wherever you need to go, and you can change it out. So if you get it all bolted up, all suspension's on there, and you got a camber issue, and you want to quick change what you can do without shims, you just pop this off, rotate this around. It's not that difficult. Also, one more trick is if I am running big tires on the front and I have an issue with the fender well, the inner fender well occasionally hitting, and if this arm is positioned with the eccentric so it's pushed way over here versus into here, right? I can actually go, like we've got some pretty good sized tires on this car here, so I'm going to deliberately move these in to kick it in, and I'm going to do most of my alignment on the upper arm because I need to have more clearance so the fenders don't tag the tire. So we're going to deliberately do that. So this is going to go to the inside. You see how I'm positioning that so it goes further to the inside? So we'll do that. So we're going to line this up. There's a lot of variables that you have here. You just got to know what your options are, and then you can do a lot. Okay, so I'm going to do 4, 5, 6. Just put the strut rod to the lower controller. Oops. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, this is the bottom shock mount. And as you can see here, there's 3 holes, half-inch hole is here. These are the 2 9/16. Now remember, what we want to do is for this to shift a little bit on the final for alignment, which is okay. We're not going to tighten this down. We're going to run the nut down on it, yes, but we're not going to torque it or anything. So just enough so it can shift a little bit. This here is going to drop in through the top. It's only going to go one way. Okay. Just enough. See that? And you could put it on the ground. Everything's going to be fine. But after the alignment, and this gets adjusted, then you tighten those down. Okay, as we said earlier, this is pre-drilled because we took a standard coil spring negative roll system off, and now we're going to the coil over. So fortunately, like we said before, we don't have to drill these holes. But now I'm going to put the upper control arm in. And these are directional, so there's a right and a left. And they're stamped D and P for driver passenger. And we're just going to go ahead and mount this in here and bolt that up real quick. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay. Okay, so we got the lower arm attached and with the strut rod. Now we're going to swing the shock up through the upper control arm. And the easiest way we think to put this together is once we get this through there, we're going to attach the shock to the lower control arm. And then we can put a jack underneath there and support everything while we line up the upper mount to put the bolts in. So let's do it that way. Here. We've got these spacers here, and there's one of these spacers that go on each side of the bearing here on the shock. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this in as I put this bolt through here. There we go. I'll put the shock through. There's one more that goes on the inside right here. Use a little bottle jack right here, and we mounted the shock in the base, and then we just push this up, and so this helps support the mount up in the tower. It'll make it easier for you to assemble the mount up in the tower. And you may run into a situation where you have to do a little bit of grinding. It all has to do with the way that lip up at the tower indexes with our mount. So you may have to do a little bit of shifting. So this will make it easier for you to adjust if you need to adjust, okay, with this little setup. Once we get the upper shock mount in, then we'll bolt it down. Then we'll just go ahead and throw the spindle back on the ball joints and lock this down, okay? So let's go do that. This is the inner bump stop, the tower support. And this is positioned further back, like we talked about for caster, okay? However, I want to show you some of this. On our particular mount, you see there's holes here. They don't mean anything. The factory mount, if you'll notice, has nothing along the top here, okay? The 3 bolts on each side are what support the tower, okay? We're doing the same thing. 3 bolts, 3 bolts. Some people believe that because there's holes here, this is supposed to go up to the top and index. It doesn't. The factory never had it that way, so don't be mistaken that there's got to be a bolt or something in here, because there doesn't. These 3 and these 3 match the factory pattern, okay? Just so you know. So the next thing we're going to do is throw this on here for the mount stop, okay? So if you'll notice right over here, we've got 2 bolts that come down through here. That's for the Monte Carlo bar. These are not factory. So in this case, we're going to have to re-drill this particular hole right here. But we're going to head and move this up out of the way for right now.
In the instruction sheets, we actually have torque specs for all the different components that you see going onto the vehicle. But one of the things we do have to do once we get this on the ground is we got to set ride height. So in our next video, we're going to show you how to adjust ride height and get it ready for the alignment. So let's do that next. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in other videos that we may do or other products that we may have, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out on Instagram. Thanks again.